Take 2.
Okay. Can you see me?
Just about. Okay, that will have to do.
Please don't fall off.
Okay. I'm going to carry on anyway, instead of doing take 3, because I haven't loaded a vlog over a month now, maybe 2 months, and I can't edit videos anymore, because every time I try, I've tried different software, and I can't use Windows Movie Maker anymore because it won't recognise MP4 files. So I downloaded some free software, and it just takes forever just to do one cut. And then last night it crashed. I'd been waiting all day for it to export, and it crashed just before it was nearly done. So I thought, right, okay, I've just got to film it and load it up to YouTube as it is, just as it is. Everything's going wrong. That's my other laptop closing itself down. Oh well, or doing something. Okay. Regret. Right. No, Ginger. So this is my journal entry from the 17th of April 2014, and it's Thursday. Had a huge row with Dad last night. Had a migraine all day, hence the short entry. I'll talk about this row in the next journal entry. That's a footnote, by the way. I'm reading Love from Heaven by Lorna Byrne. Some quotes. I am told by the angel with no name that 9 out of 10 people have 3/4 of their love locked away. If everyone chose to show even a little more love, it would have a noticeable effect on our world. This morning, as I was lying in bed, I could feel a tickling in the centre of my chest. I was trying to meditate to make myself feel better after last night's row. In the darkness, I saw a purplish light, which I often see when I meditate. It's only patchy and fuzzy. Thinking of the purple light as I'm writing this makes my heart centre tickle a little. Then this purple colour concentrated into a ball, and I could see a shape inside, like a 3-dimensional diamond. By diamond, I mean the shape as it appears on a pack of playing cards. Just scrolling down. That's the actual end of the journal entry. But this is quite a long footnote to it. Oh no. So gorgeous. I've had a few hints and nudges from Spirit. The top of my head's cut off, oh, it doesn't matter. I've had a few hints and nudges from Spirit to look into sacred geometry. I have looked online for books on the subject and bought a few, but what I read hasn't really satisfied me or explained the connection between geometry and spirit to me. The only thing I found on geometry so far which has come close to this was a video on YouTube of a lecture titled Crossing the Event Horizon by a guy called Nazim Haramein. He showed that the name of God, YHWH, is translated into Greek as tetragrammaton, meaning the 4 letters of God. In Kabbalah, the tetragrammaton is a triangle with the letters of God inside it, and each letter has a numerical value, which also has its own meaning ascribed to it. This video is still on YouTube, so you can watch it yourself, but basically the name of God, YHWH, describes God as a triangle. While I was typing up this journal entry, and I looked at the sketch I had drawn on the diamond, I remembered what this guy had said about God being a triangle. I could see that this 3-dimensional diamond was made up of lots of triangles, and I felt a peacefulness about it. And I realised that this was the same feeling I have felt sometimes in meditation. And I thought, how strange it is that maths is considered a purely logical, cold and methodical subject. At no point during my school career was maths ever portrayed as something else, but maybe I was misinterpreting the seemingly cold and empty numbers and shapes. In Western society we tend to equate emotions with life. We think of love as an emotion, which it isn't really. Love isn't like any emotion I've ever felt. Emotions are heavy and sticky, and too much makes you ill. So simply because something isn't emotional doesn't mean it doesn't experience or express love. So I wondered if somehow this geometric shape I had seen was creating or emitting God's love. But because of our addiction to emotions, scrolling down, I'd never noticed this love before coming from shapes. I'm inspired to do some more research into this now. Unfortunately, Nazim hasn't written a book in English yet, but someone has written a novel in a Dan Brown style about his theories, so I've ordered it. I was hesitant to do so before as I'm not a Dan Brown fan, but I'll give it a go. Okay, that's the end of journal entry for Thursday. And this is the next day, the 18th of April, 2014, Friday. Woke up, still with a pain over my right eye. It faded as the day wore on. I was up early today, before anyone else, so I went to Sainsbury's and got some croissants. My dad and I are talking now. When I got home, Grace came into my room and asked me if I'd seen Ginger recently, my cat. Is this Ginger? Dad hadn't seen him for a few days, she said. Dad was standing in another room, but the door was open and we could see each other. So I turned to him and said, yeah, he slept in my bed last night. He's around. A few minutes later, Dad came into my room and kissed me on the top of my head. I wish my family were always like this. I remember one time, this was about a year later, after my dad had made me homeless, at the behest of my sister Liz and his girlfriend Julie, I had called round at my other sister's place, Claire. She was sitting on the lounge floor with her back to me, and I was standing in the doorway. I can't remember what I was saying. I think it was about someone's birthday, and I was asking what she thought they'd like. Suddenly, out of the blue, she said, "You're an angel." I think I just said thanks, but then she repeated it again. I guess she must have been feeling guilty about something. I did try to convince Claire once that I was a victim of gang stalking, but she refused to believe that gang stalking really happens. I asked her to watch one of the videos I'd made of the perps that follow me. She was very resistant, but eventually I persuaded her to watch one. Okay, she's scrolling down. But she watched less than a minute of it before declaring she hadn't seen anything that persuaded her, and refused to watch any more. I can now see that actually my family are well aware of what is happening to me, and actually participate. The reason they freak out so much when I speak about it is either guilt or fear of being discovered. I remember once during this period, Claire telling me she was going to get a motorbike. When she first left home, she had a boyfriend who rode a motorbike. I think she learnt too. Being small though, she's even smaller than me, and I'm barely 5 foot. The only bike she can ride looks a bit like a Harley Davidson, where your feet rest on a platform rather than pedals. One reason for her wanting the bike is because she can't drive. She never got this bike though, or so I thought. I think I've said before that I get followed by motorbikes quite a lot. It started when a guy who I worked with began following me on different motorbikes. At first I thought he was one of those obsessive stalkers who are in love with their victim. This happened when I was in my mid-20s, and this was when I first realised that something very strange was happening to me. So I don't like motorbikes. Anyway, I began to notice one of the bikes that would show up when I went out looked like a Harley Davidson and had a very short rider. Clearly I can't say for certain whether it was my sister or not. The thought was there at the back of my mind for a long time, a year or more, before I considered it seriously. Okay, when I'm saying I saw this motorbike that looked like a Harley Davidson, I'm talking about recently. I'm not talking about when this guy started following me that I used to work with. Okay, let's find where I am now. The thought was there at the back of my mind for a long time, a year or more, before I considered it seriously. I still find it very difficult to believe that people could behave this way, even towards their own family. Claire is a Christian, and I wonder how she reconciles her beliefs with how she has treated me. We are all given the option of having a life review when we die, and in it we get to see how other people were feeling and thinking in their interactions with us, so the truth will always come out, if not in this life, then in the next. Scrolling down. But strangely, people don't seem to consider the implications of this and what it means. It means that I will know for sure what people have said and done to me. Okay, sorry. Let's get this. I think it's good. I would like to ask others to consider how they would feel if they discovered a group of people gossiping and talking about them and trying to influence what people thought about them and how they behaved around them. Wouldn't you feel betrayed? Even if some of these persons claimed to have good intentions because they believed you weren't capable of creating your own life and that it was up to them to teach you the lessons of life, doesn't this contradict the principle of free will? And how can anybody be so confident that they are more learned and wise than another person, so that they know what the other person should be doing? Isn't that playing God? In actual fact, this attitude comes from the ego, not the heart. I am not a child, and I don't like being treated like one. I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions. I have a disability which makes some tasks difficult, but I'm not mentally retarded, and I don't have the mind of a child, and I am far less naive than most people. I don't believe things just because someone else tells it to me. Okay, that was the end of the footnote. I don't know if I said when it started. Oh yeah. So my dad came into the room and kissed me on the top of the head. And then from there on it was a footnote. So this is back to the journal. Back to my dad and the argument we had. I think he was angry about something else because he'd been in a bad mood since coming home from work. You can see me, can't you? Maybe if I lean down a bit. Shall we put this pillow here? It's a bit better. Back to my dad and the argument we had. I think he was angry about something else because he'd been in a bad mood since coming home from work. He went out in the evening, and when he came back the lounge was a mess and the washing up hadn't been done. He started having a go at Grace, but it's not really Grace's chore. I usually do it. So I went into the kitchen to say it was unfair to blame Grace, when me and Ed had both been in the house. Then he went berserk, shouting and being threatening. He told me it was his house and he wanted me out. This is a footnote. I used to hear that type of thing a lot when I was a child. This is my house and you live by my rules. I suppose the suggestion was that I had been taking liberties and behaving as if it was my house. End of footnote. After I'd gone to my room, I thought of something, so I went downstairs to try and resolve things. I asked him if this was what he really wanted, for me to leave and for us not to speak for another 3 years. He asked me if I was threatening him, and I said no. He asked me again, twice, but then he seemed to calm down. He pointed out some things that were upsetting him, mostly other people's stuff being downstairs and making the place look untidy. We've had a few of these kinds of arguments before. Not while I was living at home during that short period, but throughout my life, because it was a big row, and he made me cry. He was, so it was like going red. I think there's only one other time I've seen him go that red and get that angry. I thought he was going to hit me at one point, but that was ages and ages ago. Anyway. Where am I? Oh, we've had a few of these kinds of arguments before. It's strange though, because he never does it with anyone else in our family, just me. But then I've always been treated as if I was different by my parents. I think my autism made me an easy target. Whatever was going wrong, they managed to put the blame on me. I was the scapegoat, everyone's punchbag. This is a footnote. Now I realise that I've been a target since childhood. I think this is also why I felt so different, and why I wasn't treated as part of the family. It's a horrible thought, but my family must already have been persuaded into participating in this horrifying scheme, and must have been persuaded that I was some kind of second-class being who deserved to be treated as an inferior. End of footnote. I am totally out of tramadol now, but I still have full codeine. The strange thing is, when I woke up this morning, and yesterday, I felt normal, without the normal horrible feelings. I read a bit more of Love from Heaven. I'm on the friendship chapter. She's talking about how few people show their real self, even with their friends. Then I thought of all the times people have told me, you have very few real friends in life. Well, I guess this is why, because everyone has their barriers up, and is more interested in putting on a show and impressing people than sharing genuine friendship. I think some people don't even realise there's a difference. I've always been disappointed in my friendships. I've put this down to autism in the past. This is a footnote. Now I see it is in great part down to being a TI. I'm still waiting to meet someone who will be honest with me and tell me what is going on, and how everyone knows my business. And how can you have a genuine friendship with people when they are hiding something from you? End of footnote. I think the real reason people don't have more real friendships is down to the lack of love in the world. When people are more loving, when we live in a more loving society, we will have more loving friendships. I noted a couple of quotes from this chapter. When we think loving thoughts, we release some more of the love that we have locked away. When we think lovingly of someone and wish them well, it's a form of prayer and is received by God as such. Okay, that's the end of the journal entry for the 18th of April 2014, and this is my journal entry for the 29th of September. That was Friday. I don't know, what's the date today, the 12th? So it's a few weeks ago now. Okay. Since I ordered the Zopiclone 2 days ago, I've been sleeping loads. Zopiclone is a sleeping pill. I go to sleep almost immediately I go to bed, and then I haven't woken up till midday, and then it takes me a few hours to feel awake. I've noticed, though, that each time I've woken up, I am half off and half on my magnetic blanket, so it may be that as well. Since Ginger now likes sleeping on my bed again, he and I have to both squeeze onto the magnetic blanket I lie on, while I balance the other one on top of me. I think if I buy another one, so we each have one to lie on, that will help. They're so expensive though, £300 each, or thereabouts. Yesterday, the only thing I managed to do was a bit of crochet in between getting up and going back to bed again. I was buying the Zopiclone because I was going through a period of not sleeping. I mean, I must have been getting a bit of sleep, but I'd go to bed and I'd just lie there till it got light again. And then after a few days of that, I would sleep loads. But when I slept, it wasn't like a normal sleep. It was as if I have very long dreams. I seem to spend the whole of my sleep time in a dream, and it's not quite sleep because I'm kind of awake at the same time. It's it's weird. So that's why I bought the Zopiclone, because I thought it might actually get me into a proper sleep, a deep sleep, you know. I've come up with a new way of dealing with Ginger's constant meowing for food and attention, even when he's had both. I've been trying to just ignore it, but sometimes I get angry and call him naughty, and a few times I've been so frustrated I've thrown something at him, nothing hard, just some paper, but it still upset me that I had done it. Now when he starts meowing, I tell him he is an angel, that he is a being of pure love created by God. Sometimes I do this in my head and picture him with a halo above him and with little wings on his back. It does seem to be working. The meowing stops shortly after and he will wander off. Sometimes he will come back and have another go, and I repeat the same exercise and he stops again. I had the idea because in A Course in Miracles it says we cannot exclude any part of God's creation from our love. The moment we separate ourselves from part of it, we separate ourselves from the whole. By seeing the godliness in everyone, we are helping them to see it in themselves and aiding both of us on our journey back to God. I've come up with a new aid to practicing mindfulness. This was when I was in the park the last time. I was reading from A Course in Miracles and writing down some quotes, and I was getting frustrated at the voice in my head that was repeating everything I read and wrote. I go through periods of trying to stop this, and then periods of giving up on it, but this day I came up with an idea. I told myself that the letters and words were just symbols, like the numbers and operations in mathematics, that they were empty, that they had no meaning in themselves, that it is us who assigns meaning to them, and this worked quite well. I'm not sure how I knew it would, but I'd drawn a connection between our search for meaning and this voice, and I knew if I told myself the words had no meaning, this voice would have no job to do. As this voice is of the ego, it is judgmental and critical, and gets emotional about the things it sees, all of which is the ego's attempt to create meaning from the material world, to keep us diverted from the spiritual world. These ideas came from a chapter I'd read in A Course in Miracles. In it, Jesus states that we are searching for meaning and purpose in the physical world, which we can see, and which we think is real, and so must contain our meaning and purpose.
Sorry.
Really though, our only meaning and purpose is to love, and to extend that love by creating, as God does. Therefore our meaning and purpose can only be found in God. The ego, however, wants to prevent our returning to God, as this would mean death for itself, so it is busy creating meaning and purpose for us in the physical world. Even though the physical world is just an illusion, it is not solid, it is not real. It is actually meaningless, and therefore when we search for meaning within it, we remain unfulfilled. So if you believe you can find purpose and meaning in a career, in making money, in making yourself more beautiful, in relationships, you will always be disappointed. Okay, I just got to scroll down. You will find that your goals were all ego-driven, and that they only ever provide temporary relief and happiness before the urge within you to find your meaning and purpose returns. The other day, when I was trying to quiet my mind, I did something similar. I applied the same idea of viewing the world as empty symbols to the thoughts in my head. I told myself that the words and the sounds I thought I was hearing were just symbols with no meaning attached to them, and this worked for as long as I was able to keep reminding myself of it. Writing this now, I can see that this idea can be applied to the whole of our experience in the physical world. I've done several lessons from A Course in Miracles that have stressed we are the ones to attach meaning to the world we see, and that actually what we see doesn't have meaning. The physical world can be seen as a world of symbols we have attached meanings to, and this prevents us from seeing what is really there. The only true purpose or meaning is God. When we can see God in all things, then we will see things as they really are. When I was studying art history, a long time ago now, I used to wonder what exactly people meant when they called an artist a genius. For some reason it didn't sit well with me, and I was uncomfortable saying that so-and-so was a genius. The word implies some special godlike ability or intelligence, something beyond what a mortal is capable of ordinarily. I was more comfortable with calling a scientist, or someone who is very smart, a genius. But art is so subjective, and there are lots of people who are very creative and who make beautiful art. How do you determine which is more beautiful and which is better than the rest? Also, it seemed this word was only ever applied to male artists, and by their male associates. The Romantics, people like Byron, he was a poet, not a painter, but my memory now of the different artists has vanished, elevated emotions to a spiritual level. So I think when the term was being applied to artists, it was to endow them with an ability to touch the spiritual, to see the divine in the material world and to recreate that in their art, to give the viewer, I'm guessing here, I'm not sure if this was stated somewhere, an encounter with the divine. So it was an artistic technique, all their knowledge of art history that was being judged, but their level of spiritual awareness. The Romantics liked to paint dramatic landscapes to demonstrate the smallness of human consciousness in order to emphasise the existence of something larger than ourselves. They are interesting to me now because they took that tendency we all have to create meaning, to attach it to the material world, to an extreme level. Okay, so when I'm saying that they were spiritual, I'm not talking like they believed in God, or that they were very holy and said lots of prayers and that sort of thing. I'm not even sure if they were religious at all then, anyway, but they were was the emotions. They elevated the emotions, and emotions were kind of equivalent to spiritual experience. Well, I could be wrong because it was a long time. I should have read about it before I wrote this, but these were just ideas that were coming to me. But there are certainly artists, a lot of artists actually, a lot of writers too, who think you have to get very emotional to produce a piece of artwork that's valuable, that's a work of genius. Like, I don't know, the more crazy you are, the more emotional you get somehow, the more of a genius you are, and the more valuable your work is. Anyway, I'll go back to my journal. They are interesting to me now because they took that tendency we all have to create meaning and to attach it to the material world to an extreme level. God is in everything, so in one sense they were right in representing the natural world as imbued with this divine energy, but they equated this with emotions, so the more extreme the emotion, the closer to the divine realm the artist was. They attached emotional meaning to the world they saw. However, you can't be in that kind of high emotional state for long without exhausting yourself, and some of them, I think, took substances to achieve those states, and probably this is why many of them came across as a bit mad and unstable. It's easy to see why the lower energies and the ego would want to promote these people and this idea of emotion as equivalent to the joy and bliss of being close to God, and to honour them with the title of genius. This emotionality and imposed meaning was for some a substitute for God, a place they could go in order to find meaning. Also, the ego wanted people to believe, but the ego can never fulfill our longing for meaning, We can only find meaning and purpose in God. And in the end, if you go down this route, you end up wretched or crazy or addicted to a substance. You don't end up happy, which is actually the only possible outcome of the ego's illogical reasoning. If these artists were really geniuses and in touch with something divine, they would be the most blissed out, happy people on the planet. But actually, often, they were very unhappy. They were trying to be godlike through the act of creation, but the ego got in the way. Like the scientist who thinks they can create life through the knowledge of the mechanics of biology. People have tried to replace God, to become gods themselves, to become their own creator, rather than seeing themselves as a part of God, and to recognise that God is working through them. I wrote all of that because in A Course in Miracles it says one of the things we need to rid ourselves of. Sorry, that sentence suddenly doesn't make any sense now. I wrote all of that because in A Course in Miracles it says one of the things we need to rid ourselves of. I think I've missed a word out there. Is the ego. Allow God's will to be done. Things we need to do to rid ourselves of the ego. Okay, I've got it now. I wrote all of that because in A Course in Miracles it says that one of the things we need to do to rid ourselves of the ego and allow God's will to be done is to stop putting meaning to everything we see. The meaning we put onto things, say dark clouds, like a bread knife, a cute kitten, and so on, does not describe the thing itself. They are associations we have with these objects from our experience of life. These meanings are put there by the ego to convince us that the material world is real and with meaning. But only God is real and can give us meaning. Also, these meanings that we lay over objects obscure our vision. All material things are actually made of light, of God, and we can see that light if our vision is not obscured. Hence the ego's obsession with emotion and meaning. It is attempting to lead us away from God by fooling us that it can satisfy our longing for meaning. Both popular culture and high culture are being used by dark forces to obscure our vision and to hide God from us, and to keep us invested in the ego, so that we do not allow God's will to be done. Okay, that's the end of the philosophy. This is actually what was happening in the material world. I am sitting in the park at the moment, and a dog walker with an Alsatian dog just went by. The dog was pulling him in my direction. The man apologised and tried to pull the dog away. I said it was okay, and said hello to the dog, who the man was calling Freddie. Then, still trying to pull the dog away, the man said Freddie had made a beeline for me from the car park, and said he didn't know what was going on. I was surprised, because that was the first time anyone has come close to telling me that something is going on, and that their dog seemed to know me already, and they want to come and say hello. I didn't know what to say though, or what to ask that might elicit more information from him. Scrolling down. So I said maybe Freddie could smell my biscuits. As I entered the park today, I passed a male jogger in a blue t-shirt and a silly smirk. I've been seeing lots of joggers, and usually they're wearing blue t-shirts. This is a footnote. I'm not sure if I recorded this in my previous entry, but when I was in the park last and I saw the elderly woman in the neon orange t-shirt and black cycling shorts, no way was she a real jogger. No way was this her usual get-up. On the way back home that day, I passed a male jogger who was also wearing an orange vest and black shorts. That's the end of the footnote. A golfer has just shown up. I think it must be 4 or 5 in the afternoon now. I saw him walking across the course to play this particular hole, the one I'm sitting closest to. He hasn't played the hole before it, so I'm pretty sure he's just shown up because I'm here. He didn't actually come to play golf. He's wearing a blue t-shirt. Now I can hear the motorbikes roaring along the dual carriageway. around two sides of the park there's a dual carriageway, and when I go to the park, quite often I'll hear motorbikes revving their engines and going up and down the dual carriageway. When I left the flat this afternoon, I checked the lawn. A few days ago, a guy on a mini tractor thing showed up and was mowing my lawn. Again. Okay, it was only a few weeks before this that they mowed my lawn. It was still the same length as before, which wasn't long anyway, and there was only a tiny slither of cuttings lying on top. So it hadn't needed cutting, and he actually hadn't cut anything. It was just an excuse to drive up and down in front of my lounge window, making a din. Two young lads have just walked past and asked me if I was homeless. Arseholes. I get this quite a lot. People asking me if I'm homeless, and they don't really think I'm homeless. It's just a way to harass me, basically. I asked them who had told them to ask me that, and they acted all innocent and confused and said, "Us." I told them I knew what was going on, and then I told them to piss off. The one lad said he had just wanted to give me some facts, and I told him to go to hell. I haven't been taking my camera out with me lately, but I think I will have to start again because the number of these incidents is increasing. Probably because people know they aren't going to be on camera. I haven't been taking it out with me because I already have so much footage I haven't edited, but I think I will just carry it with me so people can see I have it. A short while later, after the two lads had gone, a group of kids, they looked about 10 or 11, came past, snickering and whispering. I heard one say, "Is she moving?" In the past I've ignored groups of kids like these, but maybe it was my encounter with the two lads that had wound me up, and I shouted out, "I'm meditating, why is that funny?" They stared at me, shocked I suppose that I had said something. None of them answered me. After they'd got over their surprise, they walked a bit further away, then carried on, laughing and joking. They were too far away for me to hear if it was about me or not. They hung around for about 5 minutes, screeching, blowing raspberries, just making as much noise as they could to disturb me. At the time, I felt something hug me. It felt like the air around me was giving me a squeeze, and I think it was probably God. I tried to stay calm and continue meditating. I also said a prayer for them, that God would open their eyes and show them what they were doing was wrong and hurtful. I think it must have been about 7 o'clock in the evening by this point. Something I've puzzled over for a while now is why their parents are allowing these children to stay out so late, on their own. My sister Liz wouldn't have let her children go to a park on their own. She said there was one down the road, and she was sitting in her front garden with a book, keeping an eye on them. But these children are, I would think, quite a distance from home. Personally, I don't think children that young should be out on their own without some adult supervision, not in this day and age, and not at any time of day. This was partly cleared up for me the last time I went to the park. As I was leaving through the car park, a large car pulled in and a woman got out. She didn't have a dog with her, and she was on her own, and even though it was chilly, she wasn't wearing a coat. She had on just a flimsy, long-sleeved top. She wasn't dressed for a walk in the park. In fact, her arms were folded across her as if to keep her warm. She walked past me with that smirk on her face that the perps often have. I knew my attention had been drawn to her for some reason, but it didn't click at the time what she was actually doing there until today. After the group of kids had walked off towards the car park, it suddenly dawned on me that she was there to pick up this group of kids who had been harassing me, and probably it was the same group of kids I've run into before at the park. I'm not very good at recognising people and faces, so I don't normally bother trying to get a good look at someone, unless they are up close to me and I can see details. Also, I'm short-sighted, which doesn't help. Also, I tend to just try and ignore them. Otherwise I might have managed to work out that these same kids were often there when I went to the park. When they had gone to the car park to wait for their lift home, I heard a dog barking. I hoped it was barking at these children. I felt quite sickened that this woman and the other parents were allowing their children to be used to harass me. It's hard to believe, but these parents are basically training their children to be bullies. But there you go. This is Earth, and this is the level most people seem to be at. When I got home, my letterbox in my front door had been left up. It's stiff, and if you pull it up high enough, it sticks there. The perps often do this to tell me they've been. As soon as I got in, upstairs flushed their toilet. I've written before how they go through periods of flushing their toilet every time I go to the bathroom. Ginger was already sitting in the kitchen next to his food bowl. Amazingly, he didn't meow at me, the way he goes on most of the time when he wants something to eat. In fact, he hasn't meowed since I got back. Maybe he knew I'd had a bad time. When I got the King film out to wrap up the remaining chicken breasts I'd given him, I noticed someone had rolled up the end, the way people do to make it easier to find. Well, I hadn't done it, so someone else had. Again, it was just another thing to let me know they'd been in my flat. I've just remembered something. A funny thing happened while I was walking home this evening. God made a joke. I was practicing lesson 29 from A Course in Miracles. God is in everything I see. I was repeating God is in, and then naming whatever I happened to be looking at. God didn't speak in words, it was a thought. But a thought I recognised as being God's, not mine. The thought was, isn't it funny that of all the places people look for me, here I am in this wheelie bin, in this car, in this tree, and people can't see me? It's like a cosmic game of hide and seek. I don't know how God said all this in just a single thought, but he or she did. So he didn't speak to me in words. It was a thought. But a thought that I could translate, or I knew what he was saying. It was a bit weird. I imagined God jumping out of wheelie bins and bushes and walls to show people he was there. Probably they would run a mile, but it was a funny idea. God knows I like a good laugh. Sometimes I make comedy skits in my mind. I actually started writing a draft script for one of them, but I didn't finish it. When you're a targeted individual, anything you're aiming for will be blocked, and sometimes you get the feeling, why try? Well, this video is a good example of that. Like I say, it's been a month or two now since I managed to upload a video to YouTube, from my internet connection, from my laptop's not working, to software not working, to... And you'd think that, what do I spend my time doing? Well, trying to load videos to YouTube, but anyway. Where are we? Okay, when you're a targeted individual, anything you aim for will be blocked, and sometimes you get the feeling, why try? Unless, of course, you do things their way. They think it is possible to treat someone so badly, they will gladly follow their instructions and do what they ask, just to avoid the harassment, as if anyone could deny themselves to such an extent and still be a functioning human being. I found God's response interesting. If God was going to speak to me at all, I would have thought he or she would point out that my angry responses and the way I shouted at these people was wrong, that God would say, love is the only proper response. But God didn't. Maybe because I already knew this, so I say it and remind me I hadn't lived up to my expectations. I don't think God wants to encourage our obsessions with perfection. Okay, and that's the end. That's probably a long video, so I'm going to stop it now.